Paris, February 26, 2026. L'Olympia, an old concert hall in Paris. The kind of place that remembers. Tonight, the César Awards, the biggest night in French cinema. Some people call it the French Oscars. That is close enough. A man in a dark formal suit stands in a single spotlight, center stage. He is receiving the César d'Honneur, a Lifetime Achievement Award. Very few people from outside France have ever been given this. For months, he worked on this speech, asking questions about how to say certain words exactly right. And now, in front of a room full of people who love this kind of effort, he delivers every word in French, with a thick American accent. And the room loves him for trying.
The man who introduced him, an old friend, a director he had not worked with in 22 years. This director once made a film about a man so desperate to escape his own memories, he paid scientists to erase them. That detail will matter later. Within hours, a question moved across the internet faster than the applause had. Is that actually him? A performer known for wearing fake faces posted photos of himself in a mask that looked exactly like the man on stage and gave no clear answer. In a world where faces, voices, and video can all be built by a computer, the question, "that might not be him," is not strange anymore. It needs proof. Millions of people who had watched this actor for 30 years, said they did not recognize him.
Pause on that. The man who spent 30 years telling the world he does not exist, people are now agreeing. His team said he was sad. And right here, this is where the story gets interesting. Not the fake face, not the online question, the sadness. Because this story is not really about whether it was him. It is about something all of us do, quietly, every day. And almost none of us notice.
To understand the sadness, we need to go back. Not 30 years, just far enough. 1994, 1 year, 3 films. The Mask, Ace Ventura, Dumb and Dumber. The highest paid actor in Hollywood, and behind every character, a rubber mask, a human cartoon. Notice, in The Mask, he was literally wearing a mask. 1999, he plays Andy Kaufman, a performer who never broke character, even off camera. Something happened during filming. He couldn't leave. Andy Kaufman kept going. Jim Carrey couldn't quite come back. First sign. Something about wearing another person's face stays with you. 2017, a Netflix documentary, a red carpet, a microphone in his face. Jim Carrey doesn't exist. He was a gift I gave myself, a character I created as a way to escape the sadness of my actual life. That same year, at Fashion Week, someone asked why he came, if none of it really mattered. He looked at the camera. Because there is no me.
2018, he stopped acting. He started painting. Depression is caused by your body and your mind becoming exhausted with who you are trying to be in the world. Not a condition, not a chemical, a costume that got too heavy. 2022, one last interview. I have enough. I've done enough. I am enough. 2024, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Someone asked about the retirement. I bought a lot of stuff and I need the money, frankly. The man who said I am enough needed the money. Both things true at the same time. November 2025, 3 months before Paris, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, there to induct Soundgarden, to celebrate someone else. He stood up and described Chris Cornell. He had a deeply authentic presence. When you looked into his eyes, it was like eternity was staring back. Nobody questioned it. Nobody said, "Wait, is that actually him?"
3 months before a room full of people questioned his authentic presence, he was praising someone else's. He used exactly those words. You cannot write irony that clean. The man who said he wasn't real accepted an award for being real, and the room said he wasn't there. The question is not whether it was him. It was 8 months. His team confirmed it. The question is something older. Why does a man who spent 30 years telling the world he does not exist care that we believed him?
Wait, he said he doesn't exist, but then he was sad when people agreed. That doesn't make sense.
Exactly. That's the whole thing.
Millions of people watched that footage and couldn't match the face to the one they had carried for 30 years. Part of it is the world we live in now. Fake faces online, fake voices. Years of this have trained audiences to doubt. When footage feels slightly off, that doubt is the natural feeling. The conspiracy wasn't just about him. It was a collective flinch from a world that has made it genuinely hard to know what is real. But underneath that, something older was running. The face is ancient information, more ancient than language. There is a small region in the brain, not much bigger than a thumbnail, that does almost nothing except recognize faces. It fires differently for a face you know. Not because of logic, because this is survival data.
For 30 years, millions of people built a precise map of Jim Carrey's face. That map went into long-term memory, not as trivia, as relationship. The brain cannot tell the difference between someone on a screen and someone sitting across the table. It forms the same kind of bond. You've done this too. There is probably a face from a film or a voice from a song you have never met, and yet you know. You would notice if something felt wrong, and if that person changed, some quiet part of you would feel it. Not grief exactly, just, that's not quite the version I kept.
When that footage arrived and the face didn't match, the brain ran the same calculation it runs when you walk into your home and something is slightly off. That's not right. That might not be safe. The conspiracy wasn't stupidity. It was an ancient alarm running through modern wiring. And Carrey's sadness, also ancient.
Being told you're not real, that's not nothing. That actually hurts.
The brain processes social rejection through the same roads in the brain as physical pain, not metaphorically. Literally, the same alarm that says you broke something also says you were excluded. When the people who knew your face stop seeing you in it, that registers as injury. Carrey's brain had no choice about that. Neither would yours.
There's a concept that predates Jim Carrey by about 100 years. Carl Jung was a Swiss psychologist who spent his life watching people perform themselves, and he noticed something. He called it the persona, from the Latin word for the masks worn by actors in ancient Greek theater. Not a fake thing, not a bad thing, just a face we show the world. The professional version of you, the parent version, the entertainer, the person who doesn't take himself too seriously. Jung said the persona becomes dangerous when we forget it's a mask, when the role and the self become the same thing. He had examples. The professor inseparable from his textbook,
the singer who was only the voice. Carrey did something unusual. He tried to build an anti-persona, a public identity built around the idea that he had no identity. And here is what Jung would notice immediately. An anti-persona is still a persona. The man who says he is beyond ego is still a man performing a role.
I've been with him since 1994. I didn't go anywhere when he said I wasn't there. I just changed costumes.
The mask became the face, and the face, in trying to be no mask, became the most elaborate mask of all. William James, 1890. We don't have one self. We have as many social selves as there are people who carry an image of us in their minds. Carrey has millions of them, living in the memories of everyone who watched Ace Ventura at 12, who felt something shift when they heard him say, "There is no me." He cannot reach into those minds and delete himself. Those people are keeping their own version of him, whether he wants them to or not. You have social selves too. Not millions maybe, but more than you think. The version of you that exists in your childhood friend's memory, the version your first employer still carries. You can't reach into those minds either. They're keeping their own ship.
That's kind of beautiful and kind of terrifying.
Which brings us to a ship, an ancient Greek ship, kept in Athens after Theseus returned from Crete. As planks rotted, they were replaced, one by one, until no original plank remained. Is it still the same ship? There are two Jim Carreys, the one who has been living and changing since 1994, planks replaced by time and choice, and the one preserved in millions of minds, frozen at the moment people fell in love with him, maintained exactly as he was. Derek Parfit spent his life on questions like this. He concluded, identity questions sometimes have no clear answer. They're just different ships sailing under the same name. Neither was lying. The people who said that's not him were meeting their Jim Carrey, the one they'd been loyal to for 30 years, against the actual one who walked onto that stage in Paris. Neither was lying.
Here's where it gets genuinely strange. You need a self to announce that the self doesn't exist. Think about that for a moment. The act of saying, "I am not Jim Carrey," requires a Jim Carrey to say it. The freedom that declares it has no freedom still has freedom. The one making the announcement is the very thing the announcement is trying to cancel. The narrator can't narrate its own disappearance. This isn't a point scored against Carrey. It's an observation about the structure of the mind itself, one that he stumbled into live on the stage of a fashion show in 2017, in front of cameras, in front of a crowd, saying there is no me while being very clearly, very publicly, very much there. And the brain, watching all of this, just kept running.
Because that's what the brain does. There's a background process that never fully switches off. Not during conversation, not during sleep, not during the deepest meditation. Its job is to keep asking who you are, remember where you've been, and imagine where you're going. And it keeps running that story whether you agree with it or not. When Carrey said Jim Carrey doesn't exist, the brain filed that statement in the Jim Carrey story and kept going. Scientists who study this closely have found that even the deepest experiences of ego loss are temporary. The self that dissolved in a session reassembles afterward, Not always the same shape, but present. The background process doesn't have an off switch, it has a volume dial, and even at the quietest setting, it keeps playing.
Buddhism, watching all of this from a very long distance, says something quietly important. We never told you to destroy the self. The teaching, the actual teaching, not the popular version, is that the self is not permanent, not fixed, and not worth defending at every cost. It changes. It was always changing. Clinging to it causes suffering. But the answer to clinging is not destruction. It's something gentler than that. Hold it. Just don't grip it.
I've been here the whole time. I didn't need the announcement.
Let's come back to the sadness. It's still the most important thing here. When the world said, "That's not him," something responded inside Carrey that 30 years of studying these ideas didn't fully prepare. Not because the ideas were wrong, because the biology is older than the ideas. There is a part of us, all of us, that watches constantly, whether we are seen, whether we are recognized, whether we are real to the people in the room. This is not vanity. It's the oldest protection system the human body has. Stay visible, stay safe. The brain evolved to treat being excluded, being unrecognized, being denied as a genuine threat signal. The same system that says you broke something also says you were not seen, not as a figure of speech, the same alarm. Carrey's brain had no choice about that response, neither would yours. 30 years of study cannot fully silence a system that was keeping humans alive long before language existed.
I know you said you didn't need this, but I kept watch anyway. I always do. That's not attachment. That's love.
The part of Carrey that was sad, that's not the ego refusing to die. That's the part that has been keeping him safe since before he had language for it. Still watching, still caring whether he's real to the people in the room. You can spend 30 years studying the idea that the self isn't real and still feel that. I just call it being a person. And there's one more thing worth noticing about that night in Paris.
The man who introduced Carrey at the César was Michel Gondry, director of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, the film about a man so desperate to stop loving someone that he paid scientists to erase every memory of her, and discovered, as the memories dissolved, that he kept falling in love with her again in the fragments. The man who made a film about the self trying to destroy what it loves handed Jim Carrey an award for a lifetime of being himself, 22 years after they last worked together. You can't write that. It was just true. And here is what makes this not just a celebrity story. It is the most visible version of something every one of us does. You've done this. You've said, "I'm not the kind of person who," and then became exactly that. You've declared, "I don't care what people think," and checked anyway how they responded. You've decided you were past something and felt it again, fully, in a parking lot at 11 p.m. The gap between who we announce we are and who keeps running in the background, that's not pretending. That's the human condition. The DMN doesn't care about your declarations. The protector doesn't take days off. Jim Carrey gave his speech that night in French because, roughly 300 years ago, his ancestor, Marc-François Carrey, left France for Canada. Carré, in French, means square. Standing on that Parisian stage, Carrey said, "The square has come full circle." A man who spent 30 years trying to dissolve his identity, receiving the highest honor from the country that gave him his name. There's something in that worth sitting with. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom.
not destroying yourself, not pretending yourself away, knowing yourself, which means knowing it will keep surprising you, keep defending itself when you've declared it gone, keep being sad when it isn't seen. The Zen tradition says, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The work doesn't end. The self doesn't vanish. You just carry it differently. Not gripping, not fighting, not announcing, just lightly.
And then he was sad that people didn't recognize him. That's not a contradiction.
That's a complete human being.
The next time you notice yourself explaining who you're not, just notice that. You don't have to do anything with it. The next time something hurts when it probably shouldn't, just notice that too. The protector is saying hello. And the next time you catch yourself carrying your identity a little too tightly, you might try loosening the grip, just slightly.
Not letting go, not announcing, just a little lighter. The same man has been here, in different costumes, different faces, different declarations, for 64 years. You are Jim Carrey.